listeners have the opportunity to hear our discussions. So what I'd like to do is go around the table and have everyone introduce themselves. In addition to your name and perhaps where you live, if you'd like to give us your affiliation, that would be great. And we'll do that for our audience as well. And when the audience speaks, I just assume you stand up and speak quite loudly so people can hear you. So with that, let me begin with Dave.
Yeah, I'm Dave Benton. I live in outside of Juneau, Alaska, on Amity Island. I'm trying to be retired. Former chairman of North Pacific Fishery Management Council, former fishing game deputy commissioner, and recovering bureaucrat. That's right.
That's good.
I'm Lawson Brigham. I'm advisor to the commission. I'm a professor at UAF and also called a fellow at the Center for Arctic Study and Policy at Coast Guard Academy, former Coast Guard officer, and I was former deputy of the commission.
And I'm Deborah Caldera. I live in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm a retired state bureaucrat of public health issues and an advisor on health issues for the commission.
My name is Zach Handilla. I live in Portland, Oregon, where I'm an adjunct professor at Portland State University in political science. I was previously the principal analyst for the Arctic at the Office of Naval Intelligence in Washington, D.C.
Good morning. My name is Cheryl Rosa. I'm the deputy director.
Voice.
Good morning. I'm still drinking my coffee. My name is Cheryl Rosa. I am the deputy director and the Alaskan director of the U.S. Arctic Research Commission.
I am Carrie Eichens. I am staff for the U.S. Arctic Research Commission and from Anchorage, Alaska.
Craig Fleener. I'm the Arctic Policy Advisor and Director of State and Federal Relations for the state of Alaska, and I live in Southern Maryland. But before moving to Maryland, I spent some time in Alaska.
Jim McCarthy, Professor of Biology.
Mary Pete, I live in Bethel, Alaska. I was born and raised in the 70s on the Gracie Coast, and for 20 years I did science research for the Alaska Academy of Fishing and Game, and right now I'm on the campus in Bethel for the University of Alaska.
Larry Mayer, I'm a professor at the University of New Hampshire. I'm also the director of the School of Marine Science and Ocean Engineering and the Center for Coastal Ocean Management.
I am John Farrell. I'm the executive director of the commission. I live in Bethesda, Maryland, and I am still a bureaucrat.
I'm Douglas Causey. I'm a professor at the University of Alaska Anchorage. I'm also the principal investigator of the Arctic Domain Awareness Center of Excellence.
I'm Aaron Dotson. I'm a professor at University of Alaska Anchorage in Environmental Engineering, and I'm also the American Society of Civil Engineering liaison to the Cold Regions Engineering.
My name is Mike Ziesel. I'm a partner in J&Y Surveys, a small business here in Anchorage, specializing in tides and sea level.
Good morning. I'm Renee Tedesco. I'm with the NOAA National Weather Service. I'd like to extend an invitation for all of you to come visit our new Alaska Environmental Science and Services Integration Center, which is located on Sand Lake. So I think what we're doing would be pertinent to pretty much what you are doing here in the commission. So at some point in time, I'd like to arrange that visit.
Good morning. I'm Mara Kimmel, and I'm here because I do resilience work with the city of Phoenix. I'm Melanie Smith. I'm the Director of Conservation Science for Audubon, Alaska, and for the State Office of the National Audubon Society.
Great. Thank you all for introducing yourselves and for being here this morning. Our next agenda item is approval of minutes, but first I will turn to see whether Cheryl has any general meeting announcements.
Just two. Most folks here in the audience have an up-to-date agenda. I just wanted to mention that for the agendas that the commissioners have, we've had a slight change. We will have a presentation by Fran at 1 p.m. in the place of Nikush Carlo's presentation. Nikush in the Lieutenant Governor's office most likely will present at our next meeting. They wanted to have some time to organize their thoughts post October 4th meeting. So Fran is going to step in and give us a summary of that and other adaptation meetings that have happened recently. And then I also wanted to let folks know that this meeting is being recorded, and we are trying a webcast. There's not a camera on people, but our voices are being recorded and the slides that are being shown are being recorded. So I just wanted to make sure folks knew that. That's it.
So remember, you are being recorded.
Yes.
Is that the point?
Don't swear.
All right. All right. We'll be on our best behavior.
There you go.
Thank you for the reminder. Okay. I hope people have had the opportunity to read and review the minutes. I would be happy to entertain a motion to approve. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any objections? If not, the minutes from our last meeting are approved. For the audience's sake, we usually take a few minutes at the beginning to talk briefly the commissioners and advisors about anything that they would like to share based on recent events or meetings that they've attended or papers that they've written or things that they feel would be important for not only fellow commissioners and advisors to hear, but the public as well. And Lawson, I'm just going to jump to you on that one because I know you are busy traveling the world. So give us one or two as opposed to the 7 or 8 that you've probably attended and spoken at since we saw you last.
Well, I guess I should just comment. I think commissioners have a copy of the Council on Foreign Relations study. It was released in March. It's led by Thad Allen, former Commandant of the Coast Guard, and Christine Todd Whitman, former Governor and EPA Administrator, and the rest of us who are on it. And it speaks to infrastructure. One important bullet, which took a little bit of a lift to get on, was there are 6 major findings or goals that this council study said. And the 6th one is sustaining robust research funding to understand the ongoing changes in the region, their impact on the field. So,
thank you for pushing that.
Yeah, well, it was, I would say it's heavy lift, but it was important, and people want to get it in the top bullets. But throughout the study, we talk about almost all of the issues that the commission is dealing with: sanitation, outreach, people issues, and climate change, and UNCLOS. UNCLOS is the #1 ratifying UNCLOS for the United States, #1 priority of anything we do in the Arctic. Whether it can be done or not, there was a debate about whether it was useful to put it in. Most of us said, if we don't put it in, I'm not part of it. So it got attention. I've been at a couple of conferences dealing with Arctic marine transportation and the future related to Arctic natural resources and global trade. So I have to clear that.
Thank you, Lawson. Anything that you'd like to share?
Just that I appreciate what the commission is doing in the areas of the special work groups, including the mental health work group, the sanitation work group, and it's lovely to have a product. The handouts that are up at the table.
We believe in one-pagers.
Well done.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, good. You'd like to share? Okay. All right. Craig, anything you'd like to share?
I didn't expect to share.
You don't have to.
No, that's fine right now.
We'd be happy.
Completely unprepared.
Okay.
Oh,
Good. Nothing. Okay. All right. Mary?
Just something personal. I've been on leave till about March. But since I've been back, I'm half-time dean in rural Kansas. Swimming in movies.
Half-time dean for all the rural campuses?
For UAF.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Congratulations.
This is supposed to be a
I'm the director of the campus.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. The first, and it would probably be better reported by John, but I guess I'll do it, is that I recently took part a week ago or so in an external review of the College of Fisheries and Ocean Science at the University of Alaska. And we got kind of a whirlwind tour of many of the campuses, Lena Point campus, Anchorage, the Sea Grant offices there, Seward, and then, of course, Fairbanks, majority of the faculty. And it was very, very interesting, and I think as a commission, a very important opportunity to learn a lot about science that's going on in Alaska, and a place that has been a leader in fisheries and ocean science and Arctic-related science, and a place that is under some stress and duress. Our report will help them in some way, at least maintain, if not grow. But I think, again, mostly as a commissioner, it really let us have a deep dive into a number of Arctic science issues and opportunities, things like the LPER and Seward is a tremendous new opportunity. A lot of insight into Alaska politics that I certainly wasn't exposed to. I kind of suspected, but wasn't exposed to before. Really something I think that's very Alaska specific. We end up calling the journey of distance to try to maintain an educational and research program over these vast different distances. But I think the most important thing that I came out as a commissioner was absolutely inspired by the cadre of students that were there. So many who came just because they cared so much about work. And I think this really bodes well for the future. That we keep seeing that kind of level of students and number of students with that care. Have the resources to do what they need to do. So that's the first thing that John did. John is the chair. I should mention that the members of the panel, John is the chair. Roberta Marinelli, the dean at Oregon State, and Steve Borowski, now at USF, Chief Science and North Fisheries.
How often do these COBs, how often do they happen?
This was the first.
Really?
There has been, we should say, there has been an internal advisory board for 100 years. External. I thought they kind of distinguished that as their, we were, that was their board, we were kind of, we were visiting.
We were reported to the chancellor.
And Jim's on that.
Okay.
Jim, do you still serve on that? Or?
No, it was disbanded. Never an announcement, but partly is Brad arrived and reorganized. I was going to ask a question. So, do you have a sense within the university as to the manner in which the reorganization or the distinction, if you wish, of college versus school might affect the presence of research and teaching relating to the oceans and particularly influence?
Yeah, and again, I'll defer to John as our chair, but let me say that there was a question because we tried to really find out the change in definition. And it wasn't that clear. And I think it was more a spiritual thing than an absolute issue of, and I know in our schools can't appoint faculty members, but colleges can, but that distinction wasn't there before. And so I think it's kind of a spiritual change that hopes to facilitate the kind of change we talked about. And I think by changing that name, there is hopefully more cachet, more stature with this idea of being a college and more visibility with the university system. That's actually the challenge.
I would agree. It was a little bit opaque. I think it was an opportunity to really streamline the administration of the entity. And I think that was taking advantage of it. Maybe that was necessary by pointing to college. I don't know. But that was one outcome.
In terms of recognition by the chancellor or the president of the university system,
well, there's nothing that didn't change, but I think we found interesting. For example, there's a vice chancellor for research, and he rides herd over institutes and centers, except for two. One of them is the Institute of Marine Science within the college, and the other one is the Institute of Marine Engineering. All the other ones report up through him. So that restructuring didn't change that reporting line. The dean reports to the provost.
But there was a discussion that could be entertaining. That was reported on.
Welcome, Marie. Thank you.
Okay. And the second, the second item I want to mention is something that's really kind of come up quickly in a sense, and it was just kind of thought I had that I mentioned to others, and it seems to have some traction. And there's a role potentially that the commission can play in this in terms of helping us with the local communities. And let me just explain what this is about. We at our university have co-developed with a company this little bumblebee here, which is a small autonomous but fully equipped mapping vessel. Go to the next slide. Just get an idea of the size of it. It's quite small. That's the university mascot sitting on top of that mascot. It's no bigger than a person. And it's trailerable and quite easily transportable. Launched from a boat ramp, launched from the beach. It can be launched from the beach. Or it can be launched from a crane or ship. And again, it provides just a beautiful, complete mapping that is easily integrated into charting. And we used it for the first time off the Channel Islands in quite hazardous conditions, and it operated very, very well. And it dawned on me that for a number of the charting challenges that we have around the Arctic, particularly the local communities, this is something that can just easily, as long as you can get it there on a transport plane or even a truck or another vessel or barge, once it's there, it's quite portable, quite transportable, and only needs a few people to operate. And what I would envision is actually training local teams. So wherever there's a charting need, you can have this stage and go out and do some mapping. And so what I proposed for the next slide is that if we look at, I just picked Barrow because that's a place that I'm quite familiar with, and I know the facilities there, and I know somewhat the needs. Most of the area of Barrow, all that yellow and green stuff, which the charts are made of, it's not been started since 1945. That's the last information. And for anybody who's been in Barrow through a summer season and knows what happens to the road, you can imagine what's happening offshore. I guarantee there's no connection to what was mapped in 1945. The Fairweather, the blue lines, the Fairweather coming up there to try to do a little bit of reconnaissance mapping, but they have to stay relatively far offshore because it's a larger vessel. So still that coastal area is not in charge. I'm sure that's the way it is for almost all of the North Slope. And so next slide. What we suggest is that we just bring the vehicle up there next summer, and it could easily stage out of the lagoon. And I need to work with the local community and the barge operators and folks like that to find out where would be the highest priority in terms of what you would like to see charted. We just really want to demonstrate the feasibility of this approach as an approach. And also, I'd like to bring it back to following year because one of the real questions is how much does it change from year to year? And so if we go and map it once, is that enough, or do we really have to have some permanent presence there that says each year you need to map it? So this has gotten some traction in my normal silly ways. I've said we don't need any funding to do that. I think that we can cover that from our own funding. We just need a way to try to get the vehicle up there and Dave Kennedy. So we're very excited about this and keep the range there on the transport to Barrow. So we're hoping we'll be able to, but I would like to very much work with the local community in Barrow here in terms of where the high priorities are. And then if this does work out, then think about all around the North Slope and other places, how we might think about this as a permanent presence of the local teams that could do this, and where the high priorities are. So,
thank you, Larry, for sharing that. That is a fabulous opportunity, not just for Barrow, for application in many places. So, any questions for Larry about this technology? Or Jim?
What does it cost?
Well, the
For number two.
What?
For number two or number four?
For number two, yeah. So the vehicle itself, this first one was probably the total investment was on the order of $500,000. But think about a large vessel. The mapping system itself, the software itself, is $100,000. So it's the vehicle is just a small part of that. So it's the complete package. But it's a lot cheaper than a survey launch. Yes.
Dave, you're next. And Marie, what we're doing is we've just gone around to let commissioners do a little bit of.
Well,
You had a question?
Did you want to mention about HSRP, UNA?
Oh, yeah. Why don't you mention that? So, because you were there the whole time.
Yeah, the Hydrographic Surface Review Panel, Federal Advisory Committee to NOAA, and been around for 20 years. we visited UNH. We got a chance to see all of the technology, had some great presentations, and had a public meeting like this, and it's all recorded. We had excellent representation by all our senators and Senator from Maine and one local representative from Maine as well. And they gave us presentations. So Senator King actually had a video and gave us a talk about the Arctic and its relationship to New England and Maine. And so it was a very successful meeting, but principally our visit to UNH showed that UNH is leading global enterprise related to hydrography. Again, while the entire US maritime Arctic has charts, only 4.7% is charted to international water standards. In 1945, off Barrow, Dutch Harbor with the grounding of the icebreaker a couple of years ago, and 1933, lead lines. And the resolution is quarter of a mile in lead lines. So that's unacceptable in the 21st century when we have leases offshore. And so we discussed these issues. This interface with the infrastructure issues that the commission is studying, and so a very successful meeting. And we did see the really leading education site for hydrography in the United States.
One of the laws remind me that I should mention one other item, and that's that the university, a group at the university has gotten together and received funding from NSF for one of these network programs, focused series of workshops focused on the Arctic. And the focus of those workshops is the impact of the Arctic on New England.
Senator King, you
Yeah.
go. You go.
Peer-reviewed NSF process.
Thank you, John.
If you do that local mapping, how quickly can it be turned into a product from the other to incorporate a chart? No one has to do that officially.
Okay, so that's a great question. So something I remind you what I've got to mention. So the other folks extremely excited about this are Asmund Smith, who is the director of Coast Survey, and he and I have been going back and forth the last 2 days. I just sent him the document 2 days ago, and they're fully bought in. Anything they can do, they will bring 2 people, one from the collection branch of their Coast Survey and one from the data product branch, just to assure that this will quickly turn into a navigation for today.
You may recall that in July, when we had our meeting in Washington, D.C., we had a presentation about potential international agreement for commercial fisheries in the Arctic. Part of that was a discussion on whether or not and how it might look. So there should be a science organization organize one of the initiatives that's coming out of those negotiations, which is a multinational multi-year survey of the Central Arctic Ocean. Since that time, one thing is I will products that we share. Larry and Jim, which I'm not put together yet. But since that time, there have been informal discussions with a number of the Asian countries, the EU, and some of the other participants in those negotiations. And interestingly, there's sort of a cool temperature towards the idea of yet another committee or another acronym. And, I think that parties have now, we're starting to get to the point where they realize that there is nobody else. There's no other organizational body that actually has right membership, that actually includes Indigenous representation along with the national representation, that's focused solely on the Arctic and our Arctic-related research. I think parties are coming together. It'll be a subject at the Arctic Circle event in a week or so, 2 different sessions there. So there's some progress being made on that front. And then the only other thing to report is that we're still trying to get the next round of negotiations on a fishery agreement set up. It was hoped that the Russian side would host the next round. I was just at our 28th U.S.-Russian bilateral meeting, and Russian head delegation, same guy. He was bemoaning the bureaucracy in Moscow, which people all understand and whatnot. So he wasn't really enthusiastic about trying to host a meeting himself. So we may have one in the United States, maybe, but hopefully by the end of the year we'll have another round of negotiations. Parties are extremely close, but it's a very fundamental issue between the coastal states and the distant water fishing nations. It's classic, and we've got to work it out. Trying to get 10 parties sitting around the table, trying to all get their way. So it takes a little bit of time.
Dave, remind us, conceptually, they've all agreed there should be a moratorium. The problem is that there's unclear process to get beyond the moratorium toward ultimately authorizing a fishery. Is that the sticking point, as I recall?
Yeah, all 10 parties, which are 5 coastal states, Russia, US, Denmark, Greenland, Norway, Canada, and Japan, China, Korea, the EU, and Iceland. Those are the parties to the negotiations. They've all agreed in principle that there should be no commercial fishing in the Central Arctic Ocean until there are 2 things. One is adequate scientific basis to make a determination on whether those fisheries could be sustainable in an ecosystem context, not just single species. Okay, here's how many fish you can get these fish without harming that stock of fish. It's broader than that. And that there would be a management regime in place before fishing started. There's a lot of bells and whistles that go around that, but those are the principles. And they've agreed to those. They've also agreed that if the agreement is initially signed, that they would then initiate a science program in the Central Arctic Ocean, probably about a 5-year program, and conducted by the 10 parties. And the Chinese and the Koreans, interestingly enough, extremely enthusiastic about that side of it. I think they want to up the ante for themselves, for their various institutes that put a lot of money behind research capacity. They want to showcase that. That's all good. The sticking point in negotiations is what's the decision-making process to go to that next step. So that if you have the moratorium, we're not using the word moratorium, but that's the word, right? You have a moratorium in place, and you conduct a science program, and you make a determination that there is a stock of fish out there that could be harvested in an ecosystem-based, sustainable manner. Then what? And the what is not a vote between these 10 parties on going fishing. That's off the table. The then what is a vote by the 10 parties to start negotiations to set up the management regime before fishing starts. So in other words, the management regime has to be in place before fishing commences. And they're arguing right now about what that vote looks like. The distant water fishing nations want it to be a simple majority vote, and the coastal states by and large want it to be something a little bit more robust than just that. Either consensus for all the parties say yes, or something that recognizes the unique status of those countries that actually have a coastline around the Central Ocean and have perhaps more responsibility than those from Asia, the Atlantic side. So that's the argument right now, and there's a couple of options on the table for how to configure that vote, trying to thread the needle. And we're very fortunate that the chair of the negotiating session was David Baldwin, who came out from the U.S. Department of State. If there's ever a fellow that can figure out how to thread the needle, it's going to be
very skilled.
Very skilled. I was just with him in La Jolla with the U.S.-Russia bilateral. He was bending near the Russian side. They're holding a very firm state line right now. And he was saying, we got to figure out something that we need the Chinese and the Japanese to sign on to this. We'll see how it goes.
Thank you for your involvement with that and for updating us. A really excellent example of the precautionary principle for a change,
Yeah.
where people are anticipating ahead of time as opposed to trying to fix something after the fact. So anyway, thank you.
Can I add one more thing? Yeah, just one more little piece of this, and this is particularly for folks like me and Mary. The North City Fishery Management Council closed our EUZ on straight to commercial fishing. Because of the negotiating process for the international waters, one of the issues that's going to be, if that agreement goes into effect, one of the issues that's going to be going forward is if you were to do trial fishing in the international waters to try and augment the science program, what would that look like? And there's just a ton of examples around the world, some good, some bad, mostly bad. And so the question was, is there somebody that can pull together all those examples and sort of help sort out what best practices might look like for that kind of trial fishing to avoid the problems that we've seen in many, many parts of the world? And so the North Pacific Council last June sort of initiated a discussion, work on a discussion paper on that. I think, and the intention was to have somebody like that sort of pull together, here's these examples, Camlar, Indian Ocean, Central Bering Sea, wherever. What do those look like? What's worked? What are the pitfalls? That paper should be out maybe by the end of this year or early part of next year. I would encourage people, especially in the coastal communities, to be aware that that paper is coming out. I think there's a number of folks keeping an eye on it. But look at it as an opportunity to help define as opposed to a threat. And that was sort of, I think, the intention of the folks that initiated this council. Let's look at the bad stuff. Let's figure out how we can define this for ourselves long before it ever becomes a political issue or somebody's got money invested in going out and doing something stupid. So, I just wanted to mention that.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. So Marie, we went around the table, introduced ourselves, said where we were from, who we're affiliated with, and we're doing just sort of an update on things that we've done lately that may be of interest to the commission.
Thank you. I apologize for being late. I think I'm just too many birthdays. I'm getting mixed up with my meetings this week. I told myself it's starting at 8:30 and just still have doubts in my mind, so I apologize for I appreciate this one today. One of the things that I wanted to bring up since our last meeting is, and my name is Marie Green. I reside in Cotsville. I'm new back. I've lived in the last part of my life, especially in the coastal communities of Cotsville and Bingley. Grateful to be here. But one of the comments I wanted to make, thank you, is after attending the 7th Symposium in DC in July regarding ice diminution Arctic and maritime operations, and as I listened to the presenters, all I could think about was this is what needs to be presented in the state of Alaska, especially with the coastal communities, the representatives from the tribal governments, the boroughs, the cities, the people that are actually living in the Arctic. It was so valid information, just the different presentations that were made throughout that symposium, and how excited I got that I was learning what all was happening, but also challenging myself to have that happen within the state. So during one of our breaks, I ended up talking to Richard and Parkus, and now we're hopefully we're just at the beginning stages of discussions to see what we can do, not only working with the state of Alaska, all the appropriate departments, Alaska Federation of Natives, or whatever it may be, to get that kind of presentations in Alaska. And I know that has been done in the past. But it's my hope that we can have we can learn not only what the rural Alaska research priorities are, like listening to somebody what the needs are. I'm glad to hear that this one project is going to be under the leadership of Vera. It's that kind of dialogue I think we need to reach at a higher level. You know, we hear it on the international news. I communicate to the Northwest Arctic leadership team in our region on what's happening with the USARC Research Commission, and shared the priorities that were approved. But I just got excited about the symposium I attended. It's my hope that we can have an audience. And with that thinking, I had reached out to AFN, Alaska Federation of Natives, and sent an email to Julie Kitka. And from that, and Cheryl, I had CC'd Cheryl Letterman in my thoughts. And from that, there's going to be a table at the convention that she'll be sharing with another agency. But I think, it's my hope that we'll continue to build that, not only a relationship, but communicating, to reach Native audiences of huge gatherings of different kinds throughout the state of Alaska. So that's mainly what I wanted to share. And Julie responded, and I had shared with her how Brian gives presentations on the USARC research activities, and I would love more to see that happening at the FN convention. And I reached out just a little too late in the planning stages of this year's convention, just as a heads up. I hope that we can draw and take advantage of that large native convention gathering so that we can share what we're doing and how we can be working together. And I was grateful that Cheryl got to share with another agency at the table, and so we can have a presence at the AFN convention.
And Marie, along these lines, we're going to talk about this later.
Okay.
But we have created a survey to gather. It's just probably a 2-minute survey, just 10 questions. And we'd like the input of the commissioners and the advisors on what we're asking here. But basically, it's trying to get input in a really basic format so that people don't get bored and walk away. Because often when you ask people to come up to an iPad and enter information, if it takes too long, they're not going to stick around. But this is for the general public, and we're going to roll it out at AFN. But we'd like to get some input on the questions that we have created and what we might want to add to this. Carrie has downloaded QuickTap survey, so it's something, all the information from this will be downloaded, and we'll have it all together in one place. And but we'll work with you guys on appropriate questions, and we'll talk about this later during our session in the afternoon.
And I want to particularly thank Marie. She has stepped in for several speaking opportunities and done a great job. And I really thank you for taking the extra time and travel time as well to attend some of these meetings and represent the commission. So these are really appreciated. Did you have a question?
Just as a reminder, Marie, for people that were curious about our conference, we did webcast it live, but we also now have video clips of every speaker on the website and their PowerPoints. So anyone in the state that would like to follow up and see what was done, it is available if they have a bandwidth.
It's a big if.
Yeah.
Especially
Yes, John.
Yeah, that's a
Now
good
they
if.
send me a 20 megabyte thing over my internet.
Sure.
3 hours later, the title's down.
And now the cruise ships are gone. It'll be a little
Yeah, it really goes faster. Anyway.
Okay, great. Thank you all. I'll just add a couple of things. In the last few weeks, you can tell that the conference season has begun. It's sort of like right after Labor Day. It's like all of a sudden there are these meetings everywhere. And just a couple that I will share with you. The World Trade Council did their 6th Arctic Ambition trade show last week, and it was here in Anchorage. It has largely focused on what are the business opportunities in the Arctic, but as part of that, a number of the presentations are broader and deal with both science, the research, some of the infrastructure needs, which you know, it was interesting. It was a 3-day meeting. I attended one of those days and spoke at it. I would have to say that one of the more interesting presentations for me, and just very, very briefly, was the Russian presentation that sort of reminded us of how big Russia in the Arctic is. And just a few quick takeaways. 43% of the Arctic region is Russian. 2.5 million Russian people live above the Arctic Circle. And so when we talk about there are 4 million people in the Arctic, a lot of them are in Russia. And I think sometimes we forget that. And according to the presenter, there are 145 projects underway, a total of US dollars, $130 billion of investment in the Russian Arctic to beef up infrastructure, pipelines, other oil and gas activities, and their shipping preparation. So just, you know, as a context, when we think about what's going on in the Arctic, it was just a reminder of how big and how serious their investment is, or at least as it was described. Anyway, 2 other events that I'll just briefly report on that I attended in September on the topic of resilience. One was in Stanford and one was here in Anchorage. Resilience, as you all know, has become the word to use in pretty much every context these days. It is not, you know, it's not climate change, it's not mitigation, it's not adaptation, it's resilience, which seems to be a very broad term that means different things to different people in different contexts. So let me just clarify that the event at Stanford was really focused on what are coastal communities and coastal regions doing to assess, plan for, and focus on strategies for dealing with sea level rise and other issues that threaten not only people, infrastructure, but also economies. And it did have sort of a, you know, it was largely a US focus. It wasn't an Alaskan per se focus, a lot of California work, but Louisiana and other states that actually have resilience offices that are really trying to help communities think through what the threat is and what they can do about it. And then I came back and attended a resilience workshop that was hosted by the Alaska Institute for Justice, the University of Alaska Fairbanks, Anchorage also, and the Alaska Native Science Commission. And it was a 3-day event with tribal representatives from all over Alaska, focused on this question of what's happening in coastal Alaska, how are different tribes and different communities planning for either their relocation or their strategy to remain as resilient as they can given the threats of coastal erosion and climate change. And I have, and people who would like a copy, I didn't make a copy for everyone, but this was the 2nd year that they did this. And last year they did a summary of their meeting, Rights, Resilience, and Community-Led Relocation, Perspectives from 15 Alaska Native Coastal Communities. So if people want a copy, let Cheryl or Carrie know, and they can get copies. I don't have it in electronic format, I'm sorry to say. Maybe I can get it.
We can put it into electronic.
Yeah. We can scan it and send it out, or you can get a paper copy. So I only mention that sort of following up, Marie, to what you were saying. There are a lot of coastal communities that are at risk. As you know, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has indicated there are about 3 dozen that are at risk, serious risk, not just risk, but serious risk. And one of the things in preparation for this speaking opportunity was reviewing what the federal government did to try to assess what programs are out there that can help communities with either relocation or just reinforcing. And this Climate Resilience in Alaskan Communities, a catalog of federal programs, was recently updated, which John was able to discover. It isn't on anybody's webpage, unfortunately, but maybe it should be in ours. So it is another tool for communities. Maybe it doesn't tell them exactly what they need to do, but it tells them what's out there. And that's often an important place to start. So So I'll stop with those. There have been many other meetings, many other panels, many other speeches, but I think I'll stop there and simply say that the notion of what communities can do to prepare, and I know Mara is working on this in Anchorage. It really, to me, it feels very much like it has to be place-based. It's one thing to talk about what these resources are. It's one thing to say, here are models. It's one thing to say, this is what, Louisiana's doing. It's useful, but you really need local engagement and local empowerment and leadership at the local level to really move forward in a meaningful way. And it was really interesting hearing from the people in Kaktovik and Shishmaref and Newtok who were at this tribal meeting, talking about the different ways in which they are approaching the challenges that they face. There's a lot of variability in terms of how communities are improving. Okay, I think I will stop there, take a pause before we jump into the infrastructure session and see if any of this discussion has prompted any other questions or comments that any of the commissioners or advisors wish to offer at this time. Okay, if not, yes, Dave?
I'm looking at the screen and I'm trying to figure out on the chart on the right-hand side, what am I looking at there? I get Alaska, the United States, the Siberian Peninsula, and all that.
What used to be ice, maybe?
Is that sea ice up there? What is that?
Yeah,
What's the red?
I think that this was the extent. I don't know if it was a couple. Craig didn't have these are just for everybody else's edification. These are slides from Craig George's Facebook account, and he gave me permission to share these. 30 years ago today, there was, if folks are familiar with the movie Big Miracle, it was when the gray whales were trapped in the ice off of Barrow, and it just really shows you how different the conditions were on October 7th in 1988 versus now. And the map on the right-hand side, I was going to say that it's the ice extent, but it looks like an older map, and I'm not sure. I will find out and let you know.
I'm thinking it's the ice extent.
Yeah.
Recent ice
extent
versus what was going on in
that would track with it, but the map looks old, and that's why it is a little bit odd. Yeah.
Well, instead of point to make, but yeah, it looks like just nice concentrated wolves.
We need to know.
I will find out for sure.
We need to know.
And for people on the website, you
30
can't see
years
this
ago?
picture.
Is that what you said, Cheryl?
29. It was in 1988.
When the ice conditions were such that
These gray whales were trapped, and the local folks mobilized and worked eventually with a Russian icebreaker to break these whales out of the ice they were trapped in. Yep.
And
But
what was
for
the name of the not very good movie?
Big Miracle, I think. Yeah. And the not very good movie. Exactly.
Not very good movie. Sorry.
What was the distance?
Within, I think that they were like 12 miles off, but I need to double check that as well. Within visiting distance, because a lot of folks from Barrow went out and walked out there. Yeah. These whales were actually trapped. Like, there was a conveyor belt of people going out there with chainsaws, keeping this breathing hole open for these 7 whales that were trapped. And every once in a while, one would pop up and breathe and go back down. And people really connected with these whales and got to know them over the time that they were actually stuck breathing out of that hole, and help could be mobilized. So, and they tried to make many holes so they could go, and that wasn't quite working, but then they mobilized an icebreaker on the other side, and it was actually kind of one of those feel-good moments that
Nobody knows what happened to the whales.
yeah,
They made it.
we're hopeful. They made it. There you go.
Awesome.
I was going to mention moving into infrastructure. I was pointing to this